Hey, welcome to the pod. This is Bryan and Ryan. I'm Brian Houston. That's Ryan Peterson. The NFL draft is over, and we're waiting for the dust to settle now. Ryan, before we get to the actual draft, we got to talk about your Broncos because they were kind of in the center of the NFL universe last week, right after we did our last podcast. Uh, Teddy Bridgewater gets traded from Charlotte to Denver to play for the Broncos to compete, I guess, against
Yeah.
Drew Lock. And then all of a sudden, all this noise starts coming out of Green Bay that Aaron Rodgers is done. He wants out. They've reached out, said we want you, we love you. Too little, too late. I mean, it's a big soap opera drama right there. Is he going to play in Green Bay or is he going to Denver?
Well, I don't know if he's going to Denver, but I do not think he will play again in Green Bay. Brian, we've seen this. As great as Aaron Rodgers is, and he's one of the best, he's very petty. You can tell he holds grudges. That chip on his shoulder since San Francisco passed on him, however many years ago it was, like he carries that with him. And he was angry last year. He was embarrassed when they took they were in the NFC Championship game, and instead of giving him help in the first round, they trade up to take a quarterback. And
who never even dressed out, I don't think, for most
right,
of the
yeah,
games.
and he wasn't even the backup this year.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and Aaron said all the right things in terms of at the time, and and he wasn't going to treat the rookie the way that he was treated by Brett Favre, but you knew at some point this was going to come back to bite Green Bay. And obviously, and look, we don't know everything that's been said. There's been a lot of speculation, but it sounds like from the people in the know that and he's already told teammates that he will not play for Green Bay again.
Can I just say, this is a guy that hasn't spoken to his mother in 15 years.
No, yeah, you're right.
I mean, he holds a grudge. I mean,
yeah,
when it's broken, it's broken.
Yeah, you brought it up before me. That's why I said, I mean, this is a guy with the history of being petty. I mean, his own family, like you said, and not a lot of people know that story, but yeah, he doesn't even talk to his own family from what, is been reported. And so if you don't think that he can, a lot of people may think this is a bluff. I don't think with Aaron Rodgers, it's a bluff. I think he would walk away, quit when he's still an MVP caliber quarterback before he would give them the satisfaction of, no, we made you come back. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The big thing is Green Bay right now. I mean, they're saying, what else are they going to say? They're not going to trade him. But if they are going to trade him, they're going to have to wait until after June 1st because the cap hit that they would sustain is like astronomical. It doesn't make any sense for them to do that. So I do think once we get past June 1st, eventually they're going to have – because here's the thing, Brian. If you're the Packers – look, I know you don't want to lose Aaron Rodgers, but if your options are one, Rodgers quits and we get nothing for him at 37 years old, or somebody gives you 3 first-round picks and maybe even a couple players for a 37-year-old quarterback, eventually, what are you going to do? Are you going to just take nothing? So I do think eventually, as long as Rodgers sticks to this, if he's really not going to come, I think eventually Green Bay is going to have to cave and get, a king's ransom and start to move on. And they did draft a quarterback last year and see what they can get, they're going to get whatever they want pretty much.
Vegas odds on Aaron Rodgers' next team. The Raiders are 7-1 favorites, followed by the Broncos at 9-1, Chargers at 10-1. Why that
makes no sense.
No. Browns at 12-1. Now here's a funny one. Cowboys 33-1. Let me assure you, there is no chance in hell that Aaron Rodgers is playing for Mike McCarthy in Dallas anytime. Yeah. It's not happening.
The interesting thing I think that's going to happen here is if he is traded, I think it's going to be between two teams, the Raiders and the Broncos. And at that point, Brian, it becomes not, in my opinion, it becomes not about can you afford to give up what you need to give up. It's can you afford not to? Because whichever team out of those two that would not get Rodgers would, in their own division, have to face Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Herbert. And then the other is just basically left with, you're going to be last place for the next 5 years. So
Yeah.
I don't think either team can afford not to get him. It's going to be fascinating to see what the Packers could get. I mean, because they could jack up. I know you can only go to 3 years of first round picks, but I mean, whether players, whatever it is, it's going to be crazy. But we'll see if the Packers end up caving. LaFleur in his press conference, he looked like he could not bring himself to even think about the thought of not having Aaron Rodgers next year, but he may have to accept it.
All right, now we can go on and talk about the draft, the quarterback drama. Boy, San Francisco played everybody to be fools. Everybody was talking about Mac Jones, number 3 to the 49ers, and they take Trey Lance from North Dakota State. How surprised were you by that move after, of course, we knew that Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson were going to go 1-2 to Jacksonville and the Jets?
I wasn't really surprised at the time because it started leaking. I mean, there were reports throughout the day that a good chance it was going to be Lance. I have a good friend that, is a huge Niners follower, and he said from what he had heard, the gut feeling was it was going to be Lance. And, ultimately Lance to the Niners does make sense because now, Jimmy G is there. He's, he wasn't traded. I don't think he will be. And now the Niners are covered. They have this kid that has all the tools. They don't have to rush him. But, if for some reason he takes off and he's awesome, then you can move on from Jimmy G, just like, the Niners did with, when they moved on from Alex Smith.
And at the same time, Kansas City did the same thing with Alex Smith being the bridge for a year to Patrick Mahomes. So I'm just still kind of dumbfounded by what I'm not the Zach Fields. I'm sorry, the
Lance
Fields fan that everybody else is. I think he's got all the tools. I think he was pretty inconsistent, but when he was good, he was great. Problem was he was only great about 3 games last year. So I'm not convinced the guy's a surefire, NFL starter for the next 15 years. And Ohio State's track record for quarterbacks stinks. So, but there's still there are a lot of people that still believe that he was right there with Trevor Lawrence as the best quarterback available. And he slides all the way down to Chicago, to be able to make a move to get him. And he ends up in a pretty good situation because that's not a bad football team. They made the playoffs last year with, Mitch Trubisky.
Well, I was angry that Denver passed on Justin Fields at 9, because when you don't have a quarterback, and you have a guy that to me that has the ceiling that he possibly has, I think it was a mistake. I think it was a smart move by the Bears, to move up. And get Fields. But again, we know just based on history, maybe 2 of these guys will be really good.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about Mac Jones to New England? Because here's a guy that just falls, but he falls into maybe the perfect situation in New England. Although I still don't think New England has very many weapons. But I mean, Mac Jones went from everyone was saying he was going 3 to he falls to 15.
Well, one thing about it we know for sure, he knows what it's like to be coached hard.
Yeah,
because Nick Saban and
Saban to Belichick.
Yeah, they're like Siamese twins. They're connected at the hip. Okay, so he knows how to be coached hard. He's going to be in a situation just like the other guys that you mentioned, like Fields and Trey Lance. He's not going to have to go in there and win the job immediately because he's got a couple of guys. Jarrett Stidham's there behind. I just think that he's got a chance to be good. The question is, with what you just said, he never had to get off schedule at Alabama. He was never chased out of the pocket. He had the best offensive line in college football. He had weapons all around him. What's going to happen if he is in a situation like Cam Newton was in last year, where he didn't have a lot of tools, and Newton had to try to win games with his legs, and he's already beat up and, got 20,000 miles on those tires. I'm just not sure. I think he's a good quarterback, and I think he could be the long-term answer for New England. He is absolutely smart enough to play the game. He was coached up. Sarkisian did a great job with him on RPOs and things like that. He put him in a terrific position. I think he's got as good a shot as anybody. Again, he's going to be in a better situation than most people, as long as Belichick's there as the coach. However long that is, who knows?
Well, the funny thing is, you wonder, it was funny because it was like this big time quarterback class. The 1 and 2 picks, Lawrence and Wilson, are going to start. They're going to have to from day one. You're 1 or number 2 pick. You got to. But the funny thing is, there's a good chance that between Lance, Fields, and Jones, that none of them play their rookie year. Chicago has said that Andy Dalton is QB1. Now, look, I get it. When things go awry, you can change, but all 3 of them technically could get a year to sit and watch, and we may not even see them as rookies.
Depending on how Fields adapts to the game, I could see him being a mid-year starter. Okay.
Yeah, because Andy Dalton,
Andy Dalton's serviceable, but that's about it. I mean, he's just not, he's not a QB1 anymore.
And how long will the Patriots keep Cam Newton at QB1?
I mean, again, he's got so much mileage on him. I mean, he's not the player he was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
He's just beat up. He's so beat up that I just don't know. And but the one thing I will say is that Belichick, he went into this draft and he's made moves in the offseason, determined to improve this football team. He didn't stand pat. They're going to be a better football team this year. And, it's hard to argue with him as a coaching influence. The guys I think have the best chance right now of being successes. I think Trevor Lawrence will be a success. I think Urban Meyer is smart enough to know how to put him in position to win with him. Yeah. I think I have little or no hope for Zach Wilson because he's with the Jets. I mean, he could be Roger Staubach II. He's playing for the flipping Jets. Okay.
I will say, and I agree with you. I will say, though, I did like the Jets draft. I think they got some good players. They got a good running back. They got a good receiver. They got some offensive line help. So maybe they can start to turn the corner. But you're right. I mean, what is really going to change we'll see if the coaching change helps. But yeah, I still, it's going to be rough. I think they're going to have a rough year.
Lance could be good. He's gonna be with a fairly good football team. They weren't good last year, but a lot of it was because they were just decimated with injuries.
Right.
So he's got a chance. He doesn't have to do it this year. It may be a couple of years down the line. Fields has got a good chance because he's going to be with a good football team that's got a good defense. So there's a possibility for him there. And I just don't know with Mac Jones. I mean, again, the whole NFL had us believing he was the 3rd best quarterback and that he was going to go 3 to San Francisco, and he falls all the way to New England in the middle of the round. And so, okay, what changed? But he did show well in the Senior Bowl. Obviously he had a fantastic year with a great football team last year. But as well as I do here, again, what we told you last week, one quarterback since 2010 that's been drafted in the first round has a Super Bowl ring that was starter. Right. 2 other guys had got rings just because they happened to be on the roster. Mahomes was the only one. So talking about a couple of things, Cowboys, I'm watching the draft on Thursday night, and I'm watching the Cowboys' worst nightmare unfold in front of them. At 8, Horn goes, the 2 cornerbacks, and then Surtain goes at 9. So there are 2 cornerbacks. One of the 2 they just knew were going to fall to them. And so now they're stuck with no corners. They make the move back with Philadelphia, 2 slots, and then they take Micah Parsons. And people that I listened to were upset because they felt like that was too high to take a linebacker. But what I'm seeing about Parsons, this guy is a monster. So whether the book says you're supposed to draft a linebacker that high or not, I mean, this guy looks like he can affect the game every time he comes on the field.
Yeah, I didn't have a I didn't have a problem with the Parsons pick. They traded down. I know they only in 2 spots. You could debate, should they have given, Philly the chance to move up and get the receiver. But Parsons is really good. The question for Parsons has been throughout the whole process has been he has immaturity issues. He was a part of some hazing controversy at Penn State, but as a player, and he didn't play last year. He opted out, so we haven't seen him in a while. But he's an athletic freak. I think the only thing I didn't have a problem with the pick. I was a little surprised, just because of how much the Cowboys have put into the linebacker position, both contract wise and then maybe not taking the offensive tackle. I liked the Chargers ended up taking him. Maybe it was the next pick, Slater.
Panay Sewell.
Yeah. No, Slater. Sewell was
Slater,
gone
I'm
already.
sorry.
But I didn't have a problem with the pick. I think he's going to be really good. I do think it's bad news for Jalen Smith. And you never know what you can count on with Van Der Esch because of his injuries.
Well,
this draft was about defense.
They had to, that first thing, because they did put so much into the linebacker situation, didn't give them the excuse not to take Micah Parsons, because that failed. Jalen Smith right now was terrible last year. He was absolutely horrible last year. And the Cowboys elected not to pick up the 5th-year option on Leighton Van Der Esch today because they just don't trust him health-wise.
Yeah.
He's a terrific player who came out of college with a history of injuries. And guess what? He's had a history of injuries in the NFL. When he's healthy, which has only been his rookie year, and he was almost rookie of the year that he could play 16 full games. Since then, it's been 8 games, 9 games, 10 games. If he's not available, you got to go someplace and get somebody to replace him.
And the funny thing is, though, one of my favorite picks the Cowboys made was another linebacker.
Yes, sir.
Jabril Cox, he slipped. I thought he was going to go higher than he did. You could say that the Cowboys have 2 new starting linebackers, because I think Cox could beat out what they have. But yeah, I love that pick. I don't know some of these guys. I don't know much about. But the one thing you have to say, they did address defense. How many did they bring in?
8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
They got 8.
8 defensive guys. So they addressed the weak link of the team. And if half those guys pan out, that's going to help be a huge improvement.
2 things about that. I've heard people complain that because Dallas had 10, then 11 picks, that why didn't they get more aggressive and package some of those picks and trade up and go for some quality instead of quantity. I think they got quality in a lot of the picks. The only picks that really scratched my head over was the 3rd, number 3, and that was Nashawn Wright, the cornerback out of Oregon State, who is massive. He's huge. 6'4", 6'4" corner, Okay. But I think Mel Kiper had him as his 44th ranked cornerback. Okay. So I didn't understand that one. And I didn't understand Josh Ball, who is an outright thug from Marshall.
I think they drafted 3 guys that
I'm not too concerned. I'll be honest with you. I'm not too concerned about Kelvin Joseph, because he played well as a freshman at LSU on the national championship team, and then the year before, got suspended right before the Fiesta Bowl. I think is a maturity issue, a weed issue. He likes to do his rap. He's into his music. So, but the point is, he's a freak athlete also. And if you can get him to focus and make football his priority, I think he's a steal in this draft, because he led the conference. He led the SEC in interceptions, I believe, last year. He's a heck of a player. So he and Parsons, it looks to me more like immaturity issues. Ball is just a straight on thug. He belongs in jail, and he worries me.
I was a little surprised on that one. And
Jerry likes those guys, man. I don't know if he just sees himself in so many of them, the shady character, always, but Jerry will tell you, I believe in giving guys second chances. The thing that I like about it is what it says to everybody on that Cowboys defense is that nobody's job is safe. You all are on notice. We've taken 8 guys, and then I think they signed 5 or 6 more defensive players as undrafted free agents. And I think they're going in. Dan Quinn's going to walk into that room and say, you guys sucked so bad last year that there's nobody in here guaranteed a job or a spot on this roster. And we're going to let you compete, and may the best man win, because anything's got to be an improvement over what happened last year. And I think by drafting the way they did, they're determined to get this fixed. I like what I'm hearing out of Dan Quinn. I like the fact that they listened to him and they drafted the kind of players that he wanted. The only thing that worries me about them doing this is, what if he gets the defense turned around and then gets a head coaching job? And now you've got all these players who are designed to play a Dan Quinn, Seattle Seahawks type defense. And then they bring in somebody with a completely different defensive philosophy again, as we've seen it happen over and over and over and over. And so you end up with another defensive coordinator who goes, no, we can't have 6'4" corners. We got to go back to 5'7s that can run, 3-4 40s and stuff like that. That's the thing that worries me about this. At some point, the Cowboys have got to start deciding what kind of football team they're going to be identity-wise. We know, based on what they've done up to this point, offensively, for the last 10 years, it's been big, huge offensive line, pound the ball, and everything's been offense with them. With defense, you never know from one year to the next. What is the definition? What is the template for a Dallas Cowboys defensive player? You watch Pittsburgh, you watch the Giants, they're always drafting defensive linemen. Big, strong defensive linemen. You know what they are. Cowboys, you never know what they are on defense. Are they 4-3? Are they 3-4? Are they cover? Are they zone? Are they Tampa 2? Are they going to play man? The one thing we do know is they haven't been able to force a turnover in about 5 years, until the end of this past year when all was lost. And we know none of those guys are going to play, except maybe for DeMarcus Lawrence and Trayvon Diggs. Those 2 guys might be penciled in as starters. The rest of them, they're trash until proven otherwise.
Well, if the defense is really good, and if Dan Quinn's getting head coaching opportunities, then that means that the Cowboys had a really good year. So you kind of have to just accept that. I mean, that's the way it goes. But I think the Cowboys would be pretty happy if Dan Quinn's getting head coaching opportunities. That means they've hit some home runs on these picks, and the defense is vastly improved. Because I mean, think about how much better. I mean, because the thing is, if the Cowboys defense can just be average, they should be able to win that division. I don't think an average statistical defense is going to get Dan Quinn a head coaching job. So,
and I'm just throwing that out as a hypothetical. I mean, they've gone through defensive coordinators constantly, and every one of them comes in with a different philosophy. That's what my gripe is.
But I don't think they need to be worried right now. I think their offensive personnel is so good. I'm assuming the offensive line, the guys are healthy that are supposed to come back. If they're healthy, the offense is going to score a lot of points. And it's just a matter of the defense at least being decent, getting some turnovers, and not putting the team in a tough spot. And the offense, the one thing too, Brian, we saw they can't turn the ball over like they did last year.
True.
Because that put a bad defense in even worse.
Absolutely.
Position.
No, totally agree. Listen, Zeke's got to be better than he was last year. He's got to be.
He was brutal.
He was awful. Okay. 3 yards a carry and a fumble machine.
Yeah.
So, and that's a guy that's supposed to be one of the top 3 running backs in the league. I don't think so. The thing about this team, the one thing I'm encouraged about is, number one, they'll have an off season. They'll have OTAs. They'll have a chance to get on the field and learn the defense, something that didn't happen with Mike Nolan the year before. and Nolan came in with an extremely complicated defense, and these guys didn't know where to line up from game 1 until game 16. They didn't know where to line up. It never got better. So I'm encouraged from that standpoint. The other thing I do like about it is they got bigger and they got faster. All these guys that they drafted, all of them can fly, and that team has lacked defensive speed in a league that is a pinball machine now. You look at the speed the Chiefs have on offense. You know, the people that can score points by the thousands, man. I mean, they've got little guys that are just flying by you. You know.
Yeah.
Two things I gotta throw out here for you before we let you go. SEC players drafted. 65 SEC players drafted.
Was that a record?
That is a record. That was, of course, number 1 amongst the Power Fives. The Big 12, 20 players drafted, none in the first round. That's the first time that's ever happened. Yeah. And they were dead last amongst the Power Five in numbers of players drafted. So they're in big trouble. If you're telling me you got better pro players coming out of the Pac-12, something's wrong.
Yeah,
and yet Texas high school players, 34 Texas high school players were drafted.
Yeah,
more players out of the state of Texas.
They're leaving. They're not staying.
How is that happening? You've got 4 Texas colleges there and 34 players from the state of Texas drafted, and only 20 players from the entire Big 12 were drafted.
I don't know how to explain it. I've asked that question forever. I've asked the question, how do the Texas Longhorns not have offensive talent in a given season? Like, I don't understand. How do they not have a quarterback in a given year? I don't know. It is embarrassing. I will say, it's embarrassing for the league. In the first round, you had colleges like Tulsa having more draft picks themselves than the entire Big 12 conference.
It's unbelievable.
So, not a good day. Look, I don't know if, have we just gotten to the point where the Big 12, it is what it is? And, is this just what it's going to be from now on, where you have Oklahoma and, they're going to have good classes each year, but, unless Texas has to be dominant again, I think, to help the league, and maybe Sarkisian can do that. I don't know. But Texas, they just don't have enough. What is the league? Like, outside of Oklahoma, what is Big 12 football? Matt Campbell, great coach, great story, but what really is Iowa State other than, a solid bowl team?
I think I heard that Texas has not had a number 1 draft pick since 2015.
A first round pick.
Longhorns, 2015. Think about that. That's insane. And if it's right, and I think if it's not right, it's pretty close to right, because they haven't had many players drafted at all over the last few years.
Yeah, because I can't think. I'm trying to think. I can't think of a first round player.
That tells you what a terrible job post Mac Brown the coaches did in recruiting and developing players. Now, I'm interested to see what Sark's going to be able to pull off here. The one other thing, and then I'll let you go. Kellen Mond gets drafted, and he goes to Minnesota, which could be a good situation. I personally think Kellen Mond is going to be a career backup.
As do I.
I just think that for 4 years, I watched pretty average quarterback play from a guy that was a 5-star talent. And I think that people want to make more out of what Kellen Mond did last year than he actually did. What he actually did was he played behind a great offensive line. Spiller was a terrific running back, and he had a terrific tight end, and he did a lot of game managing. I can't point to a lot of games where he made plays to win games.
Yeah, I'm not a big a big fan in terms of I think he's too robotic. I don't think he's real fluid in what he does. He did, I mean, look, he had a good year this last year, but a lot of things lined up for him. Having said all that, I do think Minnesota, it's not Gary, but his son Clint Kubiak is the offensive coordinator. He's going to be running that, it's a very quarterback friendly offense, the play action, the bootleg stuff that I think he can probably excel at. So I think if there was a team or system that he could flourish in, possibly, I think this would be it. But I would be surprised if he's ever a starting quarterback in the NFL.
I will give him credit, and I hope the kid succeeds. I want them to be clear when I say this, and it's obviously he put in the work to move up from what he was figuring to be like a 5th round pick all the way up to a 2nd round pick.
Yeah.
So he increased his value with his offseason work.
And I was surprised. There were actually people that were saying there was a possibility he could have went at the end of the 1st, which I was shocked when that so last thing, and then we'll go sticking with quarterbacks. So Brian, I think one of the biggest things, and hasn't really been talked about, the Houston Texans. Yeah. Okay, they don't have any draft picks to begin with. In their first pick in the 3rd round, they take a quarterback.
Got to.
And they take Davis Mills. So I'm sitting here saying, well, what does that mean? I mean, first off, you don't have any draft picks. You finally get one. You take a quarterback. You've been adamant that Deshaun Watson, even through all this, isn't going anywhere. Does this mean that Deshaun Watson is done no matter what with the Texans, or is it just protection? Because again, you talk about the Cowboys getting all these reinforcements in 11-man draft class. The Texans, they didn't have the picks. And then you take a quarterback, and I don't know how Davis Mills has talent. I know he hasn't played many college games either, but it was just weird because I felt like, is this an admission that Deshaun Watson ain't going to be there?
Well, I did see a story coming out that there was some talk that Deshaun Watson was not going to play this coming year.
Okay.
Just because of all the noise, yeah. I mean, if he goes to any stadium in the country this year with all this stuff going on, it's going to be a circus. He's going to be nothing but a distraction. And already he had pretty much said, I want out of Houston. So now you got this toxic situation between him and the team. Plus you got, people lined up a mile back trying to sue him right now for these sexual deeds. And I mean, it's a disaster. The whole Houston franchise right now is just a dumpster fire. So, but yeah, I was very intrigued when I saw that Stanford quarterback go to Houston, because that sent a big, loud message that we're not real sure Deshaun Watson's going to be a part of this thing this year coming up. So any final thoughts before we let you go?
Nope. I do think it's always funny. Everyone does their draft grades immediately after, and it's like, how do you know? Like, how does anyone have any idea?
They're selling hope right now, Ryan. Everybody's hoping that something's going to be better than it really is. I'm just hoping Dallas comes out of this thing with 5 players that actually might be able to play. You figure with 11, you got a shot that 5 of them might be able to have an impact.
Hey, the more darts you throw, the better chance you have of hitting the bullseye.
And boy, nobody needs to have a lot of darts to throw more than the Cowboys did on defense this past year. All right, man. Thanks very much for being on. Again, be sure to subscribe, watch, share. Keep your comments clean and nice, please. And we'll look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, see you, bud.
And see you next time.